what we're doing is we're helping people empower themselves to continue to do what they love, what they know and love.
Welcome to the Strokecast. A Generation X stroke survivor explores rehab, recovery, the frontiers of neuroscience, and how to peel a banana with one hand.
Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 57 of the Strokecast. Some months back on my other show, 2-Minute Talk Tips, I interviewed speaker and coach Pat Roque about speaking and her, fascinating journey and the awesome visual aid she totes with her across airports around the country. I'd encourage you to go over and check that episode out at 2minutetalktips.com/rock on. After that conversation, Pat and I continued talking for almost another hour, and she told me that I really needed to talk with Gianna Rojas about the work that we were both doing. You see, Gianna Rojas is the one-handed lady golfer. Gianna was born with no fingers on her left hand, which makes golf, challenging. I just imagine trying to hold a club. Still, as an adult, she wanted to learn, so, of course, she did. Now, Gianna runs adaptivegolfers.org, where she and her team help stroke survivors and other folks with disabilities get back on the course doing the thing that they love, playing golf. Gianna runs clinics in New Jersey and travels around the country promoting adaptive golf. So now, let's talk with Gianna about golf. So, Gianna, thank you so much for joining us here on Strokecast this week.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Bill. I appreciate the opportunity.
Let's start off with, as a kid, were you athletic?
Actually, no, I was not, and not by choice. It was more by not being picked. As a young girl, I was born with no fingers on my left hand, and during that time growing up, it was not very easy to build rapport and to not have people not want to ask questions, or nobody wants to look, nobody wants to stare. That's taught. Back then it was taught that would be rude. But what it did was it made me invisible and misunderstood. So, God forbid I was in a team picking situation. I got this one. Okay, I call that one. I would usually be that last one standing. And they were like, oh gosh, I guess we got to have her. So I really didn't have much opportunity to participate in any type of sports by choice. And it was probably, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was, I didn't have the disabilities as a kid. I acquired those in more recent times. I still ended up always being one of the last ones picked. I never had any of that athletic skill to begin with. But I think what's important for listeners to understand too is that, yes, today we know that kids can be absolutely terrible to somebody who stands out, to somebody who's a little bit different, as the tribe of kids sort of wants to circle around whatever it is they perceive as normal. And it's only within the last couple of decades that the ideas of diversity and acceptance are even being talked about. Growing up, there was no ADA, there was none of the inclusivity legislation around schools and environments that we have today. So if you think about how rough it is for kids today, if you start looking back in the not too distant past, it must have been even that much harder.
Yeah, and I think it was not out of any ill intent or disrespect. On the contrary, it was actually that was the way that they thought, it's disrespectful to stare and ask questions. but it had the reverse effect. Today, with the amazing campaigns that have been out there and the education that society is receiving, it is now not acceptable to be ousting somebody for their differences, no matter what they are, whether it's physical, whether it's cognitive, sensory, health, age-related. It's just not acceptable. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, until children learn by their life experiences, it's very hard for them to see from the other side. In a family that has never been exposed to anybody who has any type of challenges, it's very difficult to even pass that down to your children on how hurtful it could be to be picked on and left out. And they have a name for it now. It's called bullying. And I think a lot of that is starting to change, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. It's not there yet for sure.
Right. It's going to be changing the entire cultural approach to something is going to take a little bit of time there.
Yes. And I've been, I guess, fortunate and unfortunate. I look back on my childhood and those experiences that I had, which were also, might I mention, made even worse by being the new kid. My dad moved, we moved every couple of years. My dad was in the Navy. So it was not only just me visibly being different. I was also always the new kid every couple of years. So every time I'd build rapport and finally break the ice, we'd be off to another station and have to start all over again. But I believe that helped build my character. And I believe that helped me on my journey to be able to now understand what it's like to be that person that maybe I was that bully. And all of a sudden now I've had a health issue that has now taken those very strong, able-bodied thoughts and turned them into a questionable doubt of, I can't do anything.
I mean, with that background, it really makes perfect sense that you would go ahead and pursue a sport that is a lot more individual focused and less reliant on the team, not having to be picked for a team, and not having to have all those long-term established relationships. So, golf seems like a great fit for that. Why did you start playing golf?
Well, the initial reason was so that I could be included. My husband and my husband's friends and my husband's friends' wives played a lot of golf. They would meet up on the weekends, 8:00 in the morning on Saturday and right back Sunday morning. They would be at least kind enough to call me to come up and join them for lunch. And then sometimes they'd go back out and then I'd go back home starting to feel like that little kid that wasn't getting picked anymore. So I talked to my husband and asked if it would be okay if I just started kind of hanging around a little bit at the driving range when he went. And then we decided that I was going to try to figure out how to play golf was, again, like you said, correct. It is an individual activity, but it can be played alone or it can be played with a group. It is almost a social status, I guess you could say. You walk up to someone who is a golfer, you've already got rapport without even knowing who they are or what they are or where they came from. So it was for me to be included in something that my husband and my husband's friends and his husband's friends' wives, they were all out doing it, and I didn't want to feel left out anymore.
That is fantastic. It's about solving that problem, about figuring out how to go ahead and have more of those opportunities to go out and connect. And that can be one of those most valuable activity aspects of something like golf is that, as an individual activity, you're not necessarily reliant on somebody else's athletic performance for your success. But also,
or your own,
or your own, right.
The ball in the hole don't care if you roll it with your nose or if you even get there. It's just enjoying the journey and it's enjoying the ability to be out of your house and out of your bed and out of your head.
Right. And you have time to interact with somebody else without constantly trying to hit them or talk to them when they're hundreds of feet away on a baseball diamond or whatever it is. It lends itself to more conversation.
It does. And also, on the other end of it, you don't have to be talented and you don't have to be good. I like to use the phrase that I don't keep a handicap, I have one. But that's the mentality that I try to help share with people who have any type of challenges. This is a game where you can play a lifetime, you can play of all abilities or lack thereof. And, it's something that it's between you, the ball, and the hole. It really doesn't have to be inclusive of having a team or, you don't have to be talented. There's no linebacker that's going to hit you if you have a bad tee shot. And unless you trip over something, injuries are very minimal, except for self-inflicted.
That linebacker might help the TV ratings.
There you go. Contact golf. I don't know.
To start playing, you really had to go ahead and develop some unique techniques to be able to play effectively with one fully functional hand. So, what was that process like?
A lot of error. Mostly trial and error, but a lot of error. I think one of the biggest challenges that we found was there was a lack of education within the golf community and the golf industry. There was a lack of education on how to teach golf to someone who is not the normal, able-bodied, two-handed, two-legged, this is how you hold the club kind of golf swing. The only thing that we could do was to have those instructors to give me some of the foundation. And then we together, the three of us, would have to trial and error and say, well, you know what, if you can't do it this way, let's try this way, or let's try this equipment, or let's try something else. And it's that persistence that actually helped all of a sudden click after about 3 years of trying. That did it. And I think a lot of it also has to do with mindset. Not just of the person teaching, but of the individual being taught. If you've already got a limited mindset saying that, well, I can't, I one of the big things that I try to preach is that I want to try to help people go from I can't to question, how can I? Because when you say, how can I, you've decided you're going to do it. The trial and error part is just the how.
There's a lot of really interesting things there to unpack. I think one of the first things I want to point out is, as you said, it took 3 years for it to click. This is not necessarily, especially if you don't have the right coach, this is not necessarily something that's going to happen immediately. But if you put in the work, you can get the reward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that had me start this journey with adaptive golfers was that there was that lack of education with the instructors, with the PGA teaching professionals and the golf coaches. Just again, it goes back to what we were talking about in childhood, where it's just lack of exposure. If I'm sitting home, and I have either a physical or a cognitive or a sensory or even health and age related challenges. There's illnesses and injuries that happen. How do you get back out doing the things that you may have been doing before? Maybe you were a golfer before, your illness or injury, and how do you get going from where I was before and what I was doing and how I was doing? How do you get that mindset to help engage you to go out and try a different way? And that's where we found that this journey that I have with adaptive golfers has been so amazing to watch individuals with those challenges, just watching that mindset change. And that's really all it is. Golf is just the conduit to get to that.
That's awesome. And that ties into something else you were talking about earlier with the whole idea of starting with the foundations and figuring out how you get there. I think one of the things that is really helpful, and I think many of us encounter this as we go through occupational therapy, or it's something I talk about all the time on my other podcast about public speaking, is that the first thing you have to do is figure out your ultimate goal. What is the result that you want? The way that you get there, there are so many different paths, and you're going to have to try a bunch of them. The specific technique, the specific set of steps keeping that in mind isn't as important as focusing on the goal, because you let the goal drive everything. You let your goal of, being able to make a sandwich or get back out on the golf course and talk with your friends and meet with your friends again. And to go out and perform, that becomes so much more important as the primary thing versus how you put your hands on a club and how you swing it and which one you should use at this point, because that can change after a stroke or other disability comes into play.
One of the things that we always do is we talk about what the abilities are. What are your abilities? And let's work from there, as opposed to trying to force the inability to be able to do, like you said, this is how you grip a club. It's two hands. I don't have two hands. Okay, well, let's try to see if we can find a prosthetic device to put on your hand so that you can have two hands on the club. But I don't have two hands. And, it's just being able to focus on the outcome. Like you said, it's being outcome driven. So this is what I decided I want to do. How am I going to do it? And being flexible and trying many different ways to find out which one gives you your best meets your expectations and gives you the best way to reach your potential. Actually, I'll tell you a good story. There was a gentleman by the name of Rich. He has been to every single clinic that we have held, or anything that he can get to, any type of expo. I do some stuff with the abilities expos. I also do stuff with the rehabilitative hospitals, and he's always there. But he wasn't always there before. This happened. His wife called me and told me that she had saw one of my flyers at Kessler Rehabilitative Institute, which is where he was having his rehabilitation after his stroke. Now, this went on about a year ago. She said, and he was a huge golfer before. And he's gotten into a mindset that he can't ever play again. And it's gotten him so depressed. She said that I'm losing him. Cognitively, he has just got himself into this position and thinking that he cannot anymore. Now, the stroke did traumatize the left side of his body. As a two-handed, able-bodied swinging, not knowing or seeing anybody else ever doing it any other way, thought his golf career was over. So she called me up, saw our flyer. I gave her a grip that we have. It's called Quantum Grip, that has Velcro around the outside of the grip. And then there's a glove that goes along with it that allows the glove loop for the Velcro. It allows the individual to hold on to the club without having to have much strength in their hand. So I gave her that, and I gave her the flyer to our clinic and said, Christmas was coming up. I said, you know what? Give him the gift of golf back. We've worked with a couple of other rehabilitative hospitals where we've done some individuals who've had experienced stroke. And so I was confident, but she was not. So I said, just put this in the box, wrap it up, and give it to him for Christmas, and tell him you're giving him the gift of golf back, and then get him to our clinics. So lo and behold, first clinic out of the year, right after Christmas, in comes Mr. Rich and his wife, Carol, who literally was at the point where he was just coming out of the rehabilitative hospital. So he had a lot of work to do still.
Sure.
What we did was we brought him into the hitting bay. We work with the PGA Tour Superstores here in New Jersey, in the Paramus store, and it's in a controlled environment. There's a level. It's not like you're out on a course in grass where you're going to have different elevations and different heights of grass. And we do that inside because it's a controlled environment and it's something that's easy for people um, to get in and out of and not have to worry about tripping over different things or stepping up curbs so we got him in. We sat him down for a little while. We let him watch a little bit. Then what we did was we brought him and the chair. We brought them over to the hitting bay, and we just had him doing very small, just one arm, very small motions, just swinging the club, just getting the feel for what it feels like to hit the ground. We have something we call them believe it boards. So we tell him just brush the club across that a couple of times, sit down, get a little water, just gradually getting a little bit of momentum, because we also have to be cognitive of the fact that, we're going to be changing his blood pressure and his blood flow by the movement. So small movements at first, even if it's just very minor, and then progressively be able to make those movements a little bigger. He came back to every single clinic. We got him to the point where he's actually able to hit from a standing position, and he's back out on the course with his brothers. He's not out playing 18 holes. He rides in the cart and hangs out with them, and maybe takes one or two hits, sits in the cart, rides another hole or two until he's rested, but he's out. And that's the gift of golf, that she was able to give him back. And I can tell you, the last clinic we had, she came to me crying and just hugged me and said, "You have no idea how happy he is now." He's not going to be the same. He's not going to be the same golfer. He's not going to be using the same equipment. In fact, we're starting up our clinics again in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure he'll be the first one at the door. Using lighter equipment, using lighter heads. Maybe if it's hitting from a seated position, having special mobility carts. All of these adaptive resources are buried in. They're there. I just didn't know that they were there. They're not in the mainstream. So now that's really where my whole adaptive golfers organization is coming from, is where we're trying to be that adaptive voice. We want to bring those resources into the mainstream. I speak at the golf shows. We just came back from the PGA Merchandise Show down in Florida, which is the golf industry. So I'm advocating. I'm an ambassador. I'm an adaptive athlete. So I'm walking the talk. And all it is just really trying to help more people that have that mindset of, I can't do that anymore. Well, yes, they can, because we'll show you what the how part looks like.
And it's that stuff. It's the big stuff of people's lives that really is the most important stuff for them to get back out there and do it. And those details just, make it work. And golf is a fantastic vehicle for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we've been talking about a lot of those big reasons behind it. I want to talk a little bit here about some of the specifics, because I'm sure a lot of folks are wondering. You already mentioned here that what we can do is you can actually, bring the wheelchair up into the bay where they can start swinging. And so I think that's great from a practical aspect of it. When you talk about the gear that, folks wear to use the club, are they generally, if you have hemiparesis or limited use of or full use of only one hand, is it generally just doing the one-handed thing, or do you have gear as well so you can have the weaker hand sort of go along for the ride and sort of reestablish some of those patterns, or how does that work?
Each individual is different. If it's due to weakness, then yes. Then there's, like I mentioned, there's grips that have the glove that loops to it, or There's also gloves that have a wrap, which has a Velcro wrap, that we can actually wrap the hands into the club, so that they can keep the two hands. And yeah, by having that other arm go along for the ride is the ultimate goal, because that is now gone into the therapeutic side of it. And that's really where most of our clinics are geared more for the therapy part of it. Just getting, like I said, getting that blood flow going, getting that muscle hand-eye coordination back. I remember when he first came, he had some balance issues. So we always had to make sure that, and we have what they call a gait belt, like they use when people are learning to walk again. For safety factors, we would have someone hold the gait belt, which would help him, give him a little more stability in his balance, with a chair behind him in case he needed to sit immediately. We're one of the things that I do is that we also do a training to teach the teaching professionals and coaches and rehabilitative specialists. We go out and we teach them the things that they need to think about differently. Things they need to be aware of, the best practices. For instance, you have somebody who is sedentary, that movement, or even just that standing up and changing that blood flow, can happen too quickly if you don't do it slowly. And next thing you know, you got somebody passes out on you, and you're, as a golf coach, if you had no idea what just happened, you might have thought you just killed the guy.
Right.
So we try to help we're one of our initiatives is really to try to help educate the industry about the best ways to go about this. Also teaching about what happens if that happens. What do we do? This way they're not taken by surprise and panicked and not knowing what to do to help. So there's a lot that goes into it. But for the individual, it's a lot they get out of it.
Yeah.
It's getting them back into their life. It's getting their life back. And it may not be the same, and it may not be what they have envisioned it, but the idea is that just to do it, just get out and try it, just get out and do it. Don't let the limitation of I can't stop you from even trying.
Absolutely. Get out there and give it a try and see what you can do, and think about how much you can do rather than, what you might not be able to do yet.
Yet. I like that word. What you might not be able to do yet. Leave it open-ended.
Yet is my magic word. I talk about how I can't run yet. I can't walk huge distances yet. That's sort of what drives everything now.
And that's where those small movements help, because each of those movements is another building stone. And if you can move a little today and tomorrow, you might be able to move a little bit more. Just as long as you're moving forward, and sitting still and saying I can't isn't going to help that.
So, I mean, your background, and you're coming into this is coming into it from the background of just not having those fingers to begin with on the one hand. I imagine you're working with a lot of other folks with different challenges, that from conditions, from accidents, from things from birth, from however they acquired their difference. How did you come to start working with stroke survivors specifically?
Well, it was because we are not one thing. We're not just talking to one demographic. The door is open to all, no matter what. Whether doesn't matter if it's just status. A lot of organizations are veteran driven. They're working for the service and the military and the first responders. And rightfully so. They need and deserve those services. But it's not specific only to them. It's specific to anybody. like I said, the ball in the hole don't care if you roll it with your nose. They don't care if you're a veteran, if you're one-handed, two-handed, no-legged. They don't care. So using the ability, the individuality of golf, using that as our our conduit, I guess you could say, is something that, to me, I'm not doing anything other than just leading. What we're doing is we're helping people empower themselves to continue to do what they know and love, no matter what the circumstances are. And again, like I said before, it's not that he's not going to be driving a ball 300 yards like he used to, but he's out. And even if he rolls a ball 3 inches, he's still a golfer. And that's something that he, as his identity, was thinking that he lost.
And that is so important, to be able to get to your core identity, either re-engage it or redefine it. But, once you start, can embrace who you are and what you do, then that gives other things the opportunity to fall into place.
I have a special place in my heart for Rich.
Sure.
I really do. Because I saw his transformation and I saw how therapeutic it was for him, not just on a cognitive level, but also on a physical level. Just having something that you desire to move for helped empower him to move more than he was when he first came. And we've now started working with some arm movements to try to get the other arm on. At this point right now, we had a couple of months off because of the holidays and then the PGA show. I'm sure, like I said, he'll be the first one at the door, I'm sure.
That stuff has got to be, and, getting out there and actually doing it on the course or at the range is so much more effective than trying to do the, what is it? I think it's called the P&E patterns that they have us doing in occupational therapy, of the patterns of drawing your arm and rotating and trying to rotate your core and trying to engage that, to actually engage it for something you actually want to do. That makes a big difference.
Actually takes the mind focus completely away. You're not focused on anything. You're not saying, okay, well, I'm moving my arm so that this will happen in my physiology. I'm going out. I'm going to try to hit that ball. And the therapy on the physical side that comes from that engages so many other parts of your body that you're not even aware that, I just worked out my core, my arms, my legs, just for going out and knocking a ball around a few feet or a few inches or a few holes. So it's overall engaging without having to focus on one part at a time.
Right. And it's engaging for a reason.
Yeah. And it's for something you love.
That makes a lot of sense when we start talking about some of the benefits folks can get who are working through their physical challenges. What about folks who are working through cognitive challenges, whether that's going to be speech or attention or some of the other challenges that stroke survivors have that fall on the cognitive spectrum? How does the adaptive golfing help with that?
One of the things that has to happen is that focus, and being able to. It takes so much focus and hand-eye coordination to get that club head to hit that silly little white ball that everything else goes away. All the other thoughts go away. A good example is post-traumatic stress. And I don't like to use the D word. So most people, they call it post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't like anything. We're not disordered. That focus that has to happen, everything else has to clear away for you to successfully be able to get that club on the ball. It works wonders for helping develop that focus. It forces you to develop that focus. The hand-eye coordination, the ability to train your eyes over the ball. I mean, it just well-roundedly helps physically and cognitively. I'm not sure how it applies on a speech side, although the social interaction does apply in that. So I guess in a way it also addresses that as well. And again, like I said, it's that focus that really helps. And even doctors have even said, I've got some studies that show that using golf, the benefits on a cognitive level. And I'm not just talking about just the personal satisfaction and the independence and the self-esteem, but the training, the mental focus training, seems to be very helpful as well.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things that when you start talking about stroke and other neuro conditions is that, for example, in my experience, there is literally nothing wrong with my hand. There's literally nothing wrong with my leg. When you talk about Rich, there's nothing wrong with his arm, with his hand, with his legs. The problem is literally all in our heads. Mm-hmm. And that boundary between the physical and the cognitive, the mental, it's a lot fuzzier than a lot of folks want to think.
Right. And it takes extreme focus and controlling that focus to, it's like learning anything new. You have to really concentrate. You have to really, really focus on it. And the more you do, the more trained you get. And if you can somehow harness some of that control into an arm movement or a leg movement, it's extremely helpful.
Since you started the organization, you've been able to help a whole lot of people. How have you been able to scale and grow the organization?
A lot of it has been word of mouth. And it's mostly my word of mouth, because I do make a lot of appearances and I do speak and present. It's me getting the message out there. The next steps are going to be dependent on finding support and acceptance. You got to be aware first, and then okay, I'm aware, but I don't know about this. We haven't gotten to that acceptance level yet. And I'm talking about as an industry, having someone come up to your golf course and is visibly challenged for whatever reasons, and then the first thought behind the counter of the person taking that person in is thinking, oh, well, they're going to slow the pace of play down. They're going to make a mess of the course. That's, I think, more where the awareness has to happen. It does. I'm so passionate about this.
Right.
I had no idea, coming from the actual, lack of better terms, the victim side of it, being able to give this gift to others when I didn't even know I had it myself. And through Adaptive Golfers now, being able to help empower people and educate people and give them the resources they need, has been a gift that I'm going to keep for myself.
And, like I say, the awareness is so important for survivors or folks with challenges to know that this is a possibility, and the awareness that the industry has to have to know that there are things that they can do, which will ultimately be great for them too, because their instructors and their folks get more experience and increase their skills by working with golfers with different skills. And, on the other side, it's also going to be really important for them to be aware of this from, a legal perspective too, because, here we are in 2019 and, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's got to come into play. And there's some legal exposure if you're not willing to work with folks who have, who have challenges like this.
Some of these organizations and golf courses, they want to have their ROI. They want to increase people coming to their courses, but they're not ready or prepared to accept more people coming to their courses with different abilities. Maybe it's just beginners. I also speak to the industry and, supporting programs like ours. Right now, this is a self-funded labor of love. It's time to be able to go out and start more programs or empower more teaching professionals to start their own programs. But all of that takes finance and funding. And it takes the support of the industry to embrace this even more. It will also be beneficial on their end as well, because they're going to bring more people to their courses, and they're going to have, more, not just the individuals who have challenges, but they're going to bring their friends and their family with them.
Exactly. To have that chance to get out in a way that they don't, and, with 20% of the American population living with a disability of some sort, that is a heck of a market. With 25% of adults over 25 in the United States are going to have a stroke, according to the latest research, there is a huge potential market of folks that you can reach out to, that you can expand your attendance and bring in their caregivers, bring in their partners, bring in their friends, and really highlight some of the awesome things you're doing for the community. And yeah, there's just, it's a way to win all around for survivors, for therapists, for course owners as well.
And for the individuals. I mean, and you know what? Those friends and those families and those old golf buddies, they are so excited to have Rich back out there. I mean, they want him back out there too. Right. So like, it's all good for all.
So has the LPGA or the PGA taken a role in supporting these initiatives as well?
It's starting to come around. The USGA, which is the United States Golf Association, and the RNA are the two world powers who are the deciding factors of golf rules for tournaments, and then you trickle that down to the golf organizations like the PGA of America and like the Ladies PGA of America. They are embracing this. But again, it's still in the awareness stage. They are aware of it, and they're starting to get towards that. We're kind of got one foot in the door of acceptance, but there's still not that support to support programs or to take initiatives to engage these teaching professionals and golf coaches to go out and say, all right, you know what? A good way to do it would be to start in the school. All right. So now you've got the teaching professionals. They want to get their PGA certifications. They have to take this many credits for classes. They have to have these credits every 3 years. They have to have a certain amount. They call them MSR credits, which are continuing education credits to maintain their certification. But maybe put a module of this in the certification program itself. At least it's awareness. Doesn't mean that they have to do it, but Sure. At least they're aware of it. And I think that would be a huge, huge difference. Make it part of the curriculum. One of the things that I'm doing with the LPGA is we're talking about doing a webinar this summer to all of their teaching professionals across the globe. And we're going to introduce the topic of adaptive golf. And it's not going to be the full-blown training, but at least it's going to whet the appetite and also wake up that awareness to say that, you know what, maybe I need to look into this a little more. Maybe I need to put a little more time into this. And if so, these are the resources to go do it.
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to just know that you can ask the question.
Right. You don't know what you don't know, or you don't know what you haven't been exposed to.
Right.
So we're really taking the initiative on that end as well to bring this message and to bring these best practices and make it part of the mainstream, make it part of the fabric that makes up the golf industry. And then that will definitely trickle down through different people starting more programs. I mean, grassroots wise, I'd love to be able to see people, teaching professionals, just take anybody who comes to your course.
Is adaptive golf going to be part of the Paralympics in Tokyo in 2020?
No, and it won't be in 2024 either. The IPC has yet to accept and approve golf as a Paralympic sport. So the next opportunity will be 2028 when it comes here to the U.S. And some of the discussion in the adaptive golf world is we're all just going to show up with our golf bags.
Nice.
Well, there is some forward motion that's happening. The USGA and the RNA, again, those are the powers that decide pretty much everything golf around the globe. And there is now, if it is looked at on a competitive level, right now they have initiated what's called the World Ranking for Disabled Golf. So now there's a world ranking system, just like there is a world ranking system for golf. So you've got your PGA Tour professionals. They have a ranking system, like who's number one in the world and who's. They've now initiated to have one for golf with disabilities. So that just happened over the last couple of months. In May, I'm actually going to be participating in, because I did put my name in the hat for this world ranking. There is a tournament that's being played in Virginia from the United States Disabled Golf Association. And this will be the very first World Disabled Golf Ranking tournament. And there'll be many more to follow suit. And I think now that that's happened, I think now those powers to be in the golf industry are going to take another look and say, you know what, maybe we should support this. So it's coming. Right. Awesome. I have faith that it's coming.
Fantastic. So if stroke, you doing a lot, you're traveling around doing this, you're doing a lot of your clinics in New Jersey. If survivors outside of New Jersey want to get involved and start getting out there to play golf, or therapists who work with stroke survivors want to start learning more about opportunities of helping their patients get back into or back out on the course, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, that is the whole premise of Adaptive Golfers. Adaptive Golfers is set up to be a resource hub. There are clinics around the country. There are clinics, just got off a call with some people in Canada. There are clinics in England, in Scotland. So this is a global initiative. If you were to go to adaptivegolfers.org, we are just now updating, and we'll be putting up there our resource page for equipment for adaptive clinics around the country. So you can go to adaptivegolfers.org, and certainly anytime anyone at all can reach out to Gianna, Gianna, at adaptivegolfers.org. And I would be more than happy to help anyone find the how.
That is awesome. And we'll also have all of those links over at strokecast.com/golf. Gianna, this has been absolutely fantastic. I know I've learned a bunch of stuff, and I think there's just such tremendous value in helping folks connect with the things they're passionate about, helping folks get out onto that course, give them a reason to get up off the couch, to go ahead and push their bodies in ways that we really need to push our bodies after stroke or dealing with other conditions. And this can just be a fantastic vehicle. So thank you so much for joining us this week.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm very honored to be able to talk to you and to your listeners about this. And again, any questions, any concerns, any comments, anything is welcome. And we will do our very best to lead anyone they wants to get more information about this. We will lead you to whatever path you envision. We want to try to help you find the best of your own potential, and we also want to help you reach those expectations that you have.
As I've mentioned before, I'm not exactly athletic. Most of my golf experience involves neon balls and tiny windmills. But it is a part of many survivors' lives, either post-stroke or their pre-stroke lives. A stroke doesn't have to mean our involvement with sports is over. A few months ago, I talked with United States Air Force Academy tennis coach Dan Oosterhuis about his life and how he continues coaching tennis at the Air Force Academy after his stroke. You can find that episode over at strokecast.com/Dan. This week, of course, we heard from Gianna, and next week in episode 58, we'll hear from Carol Ann Nelson about adventure rehab vacations. In short, there are lots of reasons and ways for stroke survivors to get out of the house and into outdoor activities this spring and summer. More than the athletic aspect of golf, though, is the strong social aspect of the game of golf. It's a sport that's built around chatting with your opponents. It's also a sport that has strong cultural and business ties, at least in the U.S. Folks who don't golf can find themselves shut out of many business socializing and deal-making opportunities. That's why getting back out on the course can be so important for a golf-loving stroke survivor, or even for the survivor just looking for a new hobby. It's got physical, cognitive, social, cultural, and economic advantages, all sorts of different ways to help with recovery. And the work Gianna is doing to get folks access to those advantages is fantastic. And that brings us to our hack of the week. Let's go back to Gianna for our hack.
Oh, gosh. The first one that pops to mind is hysterical. I can't believe I'm even thinking of this. Velcro on your sneakers. No laces. Velcro.
Awesome.
Skechers makes these shoes that have, looks like shoelaces, but it's just rubber. It's almost like a rubber bandish kind of, where you just pull up the tongue, you stick your foot in there, and it looks like your shoes are tied, but you never touched them. So, shoes with Velcro.
All of my shoes now have Velcro. It's awesome.
Oh, see? So that's not quite a hack if you already know about it. Pull on, pull off clothing, things without buttons and zippers. There's now a new line of active wear. Therapy, what can I say? Adaptive clothing has now become a hot topic as well.
So that's it for this week. Encourage the PGA and the LPGA to make adaptive golf part of their continuing education requirements. Check out Gianna's links and resources by visiting strokecast.com/golf. Be sure to share this episode with a golf fan in your life by giving them the link strokecast.com/golf. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
The Strokecast, Bill Monroe, and Bill's guests provide general information and entertainment, not medical advice. Please do not make any changes to your treatment plan or the execution of your treatment plan without first consulting your personal doctor or medical team. The Strokecast is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.